I want you to imagine something for a second. A war breaks out in the Middle East. Oil hits $170 a barrel. The Strait of Hormuz, the narrow waterway that carries 20% of the world's oil, effectively closes. Refineries burn across 4 countries. Qatar's gas terminal takes a missile strike. Europe loses access to a second major energy supplier in 4 years. Every government on Earth looks at their energy grid and asks the same terrifying question. If that waterway closes permanently, how do we keep the lights on? That question, that single desperate question, just sent $21 billion pouring into one metal almost overnight. Not gold, not silver, not copper. A metal that most people in the precious metals community have barely thought about. A metal that was abandoned for 15 years, written off, left for dead. And a metal that, I believe, when you understand what I'm about to show you, is setting up for one of the most powerful price moves of this entire decade. I'm not going to tell you the name yet, because if I tell you the name right now, you'll think you already know the story. And you don't. The story is bigger than the name, so stay with me, because by the time I reveal it, you won't just know what it is. You'll understand exactly why $21 billion just landed on it, why every major government is scrambling to secure it, and why it is directly, and I mean directly, connected to silver in a way that almost nobody on this platform has figured out yet. The connection to silver is the part that changed my entire investment thesis, and it will change yours too. Comment game, clue drop, 0, 45, 1, 30. Before I show you the data, I want to play a game. I'm going to give you 3 clues right now. Drop your guess in the comments before I reveal it. I'll pin the best analysis at the end. Clue 1, it is not gold, silver, platinum, or any precious metal. Clue 2, it has absolutely nothing to do with jewelry, coins, or monetary history. Clue 3, it produces energy, enormous amounts of energy, from a volume so small it would fit in a single room. Drop your guess right now, pause if you need to, and then keep watching, because even if you guess correctly, the why behind the $21 billion is going to surprise you. The crisis that changed everything. 133 a stock. Here is the context you need to understand why this moment is different from anything we have seen in decades. The Iran war did not just create an oil shock, it exposed the single most dangerous vulnerability in the entire global energy system. The fact that every country on Earth depends on energy that has to travel through one narrow waterway, controlled by a country now at war. $170 oil. That is not a forecast. That is where we are. The Strait of Hormuz, effectively closed. Gulf refineries burning across 4 countries simultaneously, and Qatar's LNG terminal, the one that supplies 20% of Europe's natural gas, suffering long-term structural damage from Iranian missiles. Think about what that means for Europe. They already lost Russian gas after Ukraine. Now they've lost Qatar too. 2 of their biggest energy suppliers gone in 4 years. And here's the moment that changed everything. I was sitting there looking at the data, the energy flows, the burning refineries, the gas terminals going dark, and I asked myself one question. What replaces this? What energy source exists that cannot be disrupted by closing a strait, bombing a pipeline, or blockading a port? The answer was so obvious it almost felt embarrassing, and yet the market was not pricing it in. Not yet. Building the mystery. More clues. 3 home 420. Let me give you more clues before the reveal. This metal was abandoned by the entire world after a single disaster in 2011. One event, one country. And the fear it created was so powerful that governments worldwide began shutting down facilities, canceling investments, and pretending this energy source no longer existed. For 15 years, the supply chain for this metal withered. Mines stopped being developed. Companies stopped investing. The world told itself it didn't need this anymore. The world was wrong. Here is the clue that should give it away. The fuel for this metal is so energy dense that a single facility can store 2 full years of supply on site. 2 years on site, no ships needed, no pipelines, no Strait of Hormuz, no choke points, no vulnerability. While oil needs daily supertanker deliveries and gas needs pipelines that can be bombed, this metal's fuel just sits there, quietly, ready to power a country for 2 years without a single shipment. That is why, when the Middle East started burning, every government on Earth suddenly looked at this metal the same way, not as a climate policy, but as a survival strategy. Last week, the president of the European Commission stood up publicly and said reducing their capacity in this sector over the past 15 years was, and I'm quoting her, a strategic mistake. A strategic mistake. 15 years of policy reversed in one speech. And Japan, the country that fears this metal more than any other on the planet, the country that was ground zero for the disaster that shut everything down, Japan is now restarting the facilities it mothballed. When the most traumatized country in the world says, we need it back, something permanent has shifted. The metal is uranium. The sector is nuclear power. And before you click away thinking you already know this story, stay. Because what I'm about to show you about the connection between uranium and silver is the part that almost nobody on YouTube is talking about. Nobody. And it is the piece that I believe changes the entire investment thesis for both metals simultaneously. Let me show you why uranium right now looks almost identical to silver before the 4x move. The uranium setup, mirror of silver, 530, 730. Cast your mind back to silver in 2024, an overlooked metal, underinvested mining sector, supply constrained from years of neglect, demand quietly growing from solar and electronics, price sitting near multi-year lows while the fundamental case was the strongest it had been in decades. Then the rally started. $32 to $121, nearly 4 times your money in under 2 years. The people who saw that setup early made fortunes. The people who dismissed it as just silver missed one of the best commodity trades of the decade. Uranium right now is in the exact same position. Exact same. Before Fukushima in 2011, the world had 443 operating nuclear reactors. After Fukushima, Japan alone took 54 reactors offline. Germany committed to shutting down everything. Investment in uranium mines collapsed because why would you invest in a mine for a fuel nobody wanted? But here's what happened during those 15 years of neglect. While uranium was being ignored, global electricity demand grew by over 25%. AI data centers started consuming staggering amounts of power. Electric vehicles added new demand, and the existing uranium mines kept depleting their reserves without a single major new discovery being developed to replace them. The supply gap widened every single year, quietly, invisibly, until the Iran war made energy security the most important issue on Earth overnight. And then the CEO of Urano, one of the world's largest nuclear fuel suppliers, said his company now has more than $21 billion in signed orders. Not speculation, not projections, signed contracts, paid for, committed. His words. Governments realize they need to not rely on anyone for their energy, and nuclear offers a way to do that, not rely on anyone. That is the new energy doctrine. And uranium is the metal that makes it possible. The connection nobody is making, 7:30 to 11 hour. Here's the part I want you to sit with. The world is rebuilding its energy infrastructure, not tweaking it, rebuilding it from the ground up, from dependence on Middle Eastern fossil fuels to independence through 2 specific technologies, solar and nuclear. Those 2 technologies are the answer to every government's question right now. How do we generate power that no missile, no blockade, and no war can disrupt? And here is the critical piece that most silver investors are missing entirely. Each technology needs one specific metal. Solar needs silver. Every single solar panel built anywhere on Earth requires silver for its electrical contacts. As the world accelerates solar deployment, not as a climate goal, but as a national security strategy, silver demand grows, structurally, for decades. Every panel built for the next 30 years needs silver. Nuclear needs uranium. Every reactor requires uranium fuel. As governments accelerate nuclear deployment to secure baseload power that cannot be bombed or blockaded, uranium demand grows. $21 billion in orders. That just one company tells you the acceleration is already real. Silver and uranium are not competing metals. They are not alternatives to each other. They are partners. 2 sides of the same coin. The world needs both. And both are in structural supply deficits after decades of underinvestment. This is the trade that I think most people have not assembled yet. Not because the pieces aren't visible, but because nobody has laid them out side by side. The Iran war did not just create an oil crisis. It created the most powerful demand catalyst in the history of both these metals simultaneously. The food crisis dimension. The 11 or 14 watts. Now here is the angle that I think will genuinely change how you think about the timeline. Most investors are looking at this as an energy story. It is also a food story. Fertilizer is made from natural gas. Natural gas flows through the Strait of Hormuz. The strait is effectively closed. Fertilizer prices are already up 44%, and food prices are about to follow in countries where food already takes 30 to 50% of household income. 2/3 to 3/4 of the world's urea supply is threatened by this war. That is not my estimate. That is from major banking analysts. Kenya's fertilizer cost is up 40%. Bangladesh, Pakistan, Somalia, countries with zero fertilizer stockpiles, are completely dependent on Gulf supply that is now disrupted. The UN's Food and Agriculture Organization chief said publicly, "If this war extends beyond a month, there will be problems with planting and yields globally." Here's why this matters for silver and uranium. When food prices surge in developing countries, governments do not write policy papers. They face protests, riots, regime changes. The 2011 Arab Spring was triggered by bread prices. Syria's civil war began in part from the cost of food. History does not repeat exactly, but the conditions for a repeat are building faster than at any point since 2022. And the only way to break the chain, from oil to fertilizer to food to social collapse, is to stop depending on fossil fuels from war zones, which means solar, which means nuclear, which means silver, which means uranium. Every crisis feeds the next. Oil crisis feeds the food crisis. Food crisis feeds the political crisis. Political crisis feeds the demand for energy independence. Energy independence feeds demand for solar and nuclear. Solar feeds demand for silver. Nuclear feeds demand for uranium. Silver and uranium sit at the end of every single chain. The investment thesis, 14 where's 1730. Let me be direct about something now. This is not a trade. This is not a 6-month setup. This is a structural shift that will play out over the next 10 to 20 years. The world is not adjusting its energy policy. It is rebuilding its entire energy infrastructure from scratch in a direction that requires silver and uranium in quantities that do not currently exist. The mines have not been built. The supply chains have not been established. The demand is arriving today. When demand arrives before supply can respond, price has to adjust upward. That is not a thesis. That is arithmetic. Silver went from $30 to $121 and then crashed back to $61. I know what that crash felt like. It felt like the end of the story. It was not the end of the story. It was a liquidity event, a margin call cascade. The kind of crash that happens when leveraged positions unwind, not when fundamental demand disappears. The demand for physical silver did not decline. It increased. Solar installations continued growing. Electronics continued consuming silver. And the war added a national security dimension to silver demand that simply did not exist 3 months ago. Silver is no longer just an investment metal. It is no longer just an industrial metal. It is now a strategic metal. A metal that countries need to secure their energy future. And strategic metals do not trade at $61 when supply is in deficit and demand is structurally accelerating. The United States Congress just introduced the Silver Act to expand vault infrastructure because the delivery system is choking on physical demand. That is the government telling you, officially, that silver is a strategic asset. When Congress legislates your commodity, the game has changed permanently. Uranium is at the same starting point silver was before the 4X move. Dead sector, no new investment, supply and deficit, and then a crisis, a single violent crisis that made it critical overnight. $21 billion in new orders, Japan restarting reactors, Europe reversing 15 years of anti-nuclear policy, a new generation of small modular reactors, cheaper, faster, deployable within years, not decades, changing the economics of nuclear completely. The setup is not similar to silver's setup. It is identical. Close, 1730, 19 curve. I want to leave you with one thought. When the Iran war started, most investors looked at $170 oil and thought, energy crisis, sell oil stocks, buy commodities, simple rotation. What very few people saw, and what I've been trying to show you in this video, is that the Iran war did not create a temporary disruption. It created a permanent realignment. Every country on earth just learned that depending on fossil fuels from a war zone is not an energy policy. It is a vulnerability. And the response to that lesson is being funded right now in the trillions across every major government on earth. Solar needs silver. Nuclear needs uranium. Both are in deficit. Both are accelerating. Both are underpriced relative to what is coming. The investors who understand both metals, not just one, will be positioned for what I think is the most powerful commodity move of the next decade. Drop a comment. Tell me if you guessed uranium before the reveal. Tell me if the food crisis angle changed how you're thinking about the timeline. Tell me which metal you're more convicted on right now. Silver, uranium, or both. I'll pin the best analysis. If this video showed you something you hadn't seen before, share it with someone who only owns silver. They need to see the bigger picture. Hit subscribe. I cover silver, gold, the energy crisis, and every macro force driving the commodity supercycle. New videos every week. This is the hidden economy. I'll see you in the next one. Here's what changed most significantly from the original. The hook was rebuilt from scratch. It now opens with a visceral scenario, war, burning refineries, $170 oil, before any mention of a metal, so the viewer is emotionally invested before the mystery even begins. The reveal is delayed deeper into the video, and the silver-uranium connection section is restructured, so it feels like a discovery the viewer makes alongside you, not a lecture. The close ends on conviction, not just information.